Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Low Budget Review Show. I'm your host, Eric Smith, and today I'm talking about Lock In by John Scalzi. It's a novel of the near future. This is published by Tor Books in 2014. Paperback came out this year, 2015. And this is a science fiction mystery. So, in the near future, a new virus kind of covers the globe. If you catch it, most people just get sick. They get a fever, little bit of meningitis, I believe it is. But for a small percentage of people, they get what eventually becomes known as Hayden's syndrome, or lock-in, which means they're alive, they're aware, but they are completely immobile. Sort of a waking coma, I guess, might be the easiest way to describe it. They can't move, they can't talk, nothing. But they're awake and aware, except when they're sleeping. So this is the world that we're in. And there's been all sorts of advances in helping out people with Hayden's. Some people that were affected by the disease had an alteration in their brain makeup, the makeup of their brain, and but didn't become locked in, but they can become what is known as an integrator. So with the proper hardware installed, someone with lock-in can transfer their consciousness into an integrator and use them. Say a little kid wants to go to Disneyland, a little kid with lock-in, obviously, or with Hayden's, wants to go to Disneyland. They can rent an integrator. Their consciousness goes in the integrator's body, and then they can go to Disneyland and ride all the rides and have their picture taken with Mickey Mouse, even though it won't look like them. And there's also basically robots that they can put their consciousness into. That's more for rich people, it seems. So this is the world. And at the point of the story, the Abrams-Kettering bill has just passed, and it's going to slash funding for Hayden's research. So, our main character is Chris Shane, and he is locked in, but he's an FBI agent on his first day. Well, his first day is just paperwork. His second day, there's a murder. So Chris Shane meets his partner Leslie Vann at the murder scene. They go to check it out, and the suspect is an integrator, which creates some difficult issues. But that's basically the setup. I don't know how clear that was, but that's the setup for this murder mystery, and this is the world in which it takes place. So, right off the bat, I was immediately reminded of the old Isaac Asimov robot mysteries, simply because Scalzi has created this world where you have humans and not actually robots like in the Asimov books, but Hayden's in robot bodies or in integrators, and you're dealing with all these interesting issues that come with this sort of new group or this new class of people. So I was reminded, like I said, of those books simply in that way. Again, more of a theme thing than the story itself. So Chris Shane is a great character. He was pretty young when he became locked in, and his father is a very famous, very rich man who's going to be running for Congress or the Senate, one of those things. And so growing up, Chris Shane was sort of the poster child for Hayden's syndrome. But he just wants to be a cop, basically, so, which is why he joined the FBI. He does have a nice, shiny new model of robot that he uses, and the society for these people with Hayden's is very interesting. They have an internet place called the Agora. I don't want to get all matrixy, but essentially it's a place in the virtual world where they can go and interact. And I think normal people, if I recall correctly, there are only certain spots where normal people can go, but it's this whole virtual world that's opened up to the Haydens. And they can even create their own personal space. There's a little ongoing joke about Chris Shane's ongoing space that I liked. And Scalzi does a good job of creating this whole new world. There's not a lot that goes on in the virtual world. Like I said, it's not really matrixy or anything. It's just another location where a little bit of the story takes place. There, of course, are people who don't like the Haydens. There's always a prejudice and bigotry for any minority, it seems. And very early in the book, there's a part I like where Chris Shane and his partner, and I haven't mentioned his partner yet, Leslie Vann, the veteran FBI agent that Shane is teamed up with, and she used to be an integrator, so she has a little special knowledge about this society as well. But so Van and Shane go to the local police precinct because of this murder they're working on, and one of the people there calls Shane a clank, and Shane says that that's offensive. They prefer to be called threeps. And the guy says, well, what's the difference? And Shane says, well, one is based on a beloved android character from one of the most loved film franchises of all time, and the other is the noise of a piece of broken machinery. So I love that they took the name, the slang term for these robot bodies from C-3PO. That's a nice little nod. There's all sorts of nice little touches, little details in the book like that. I like how they refer to certain movies that we wouldn't consider old as old classics. Again, just to sort of emphasize the point that this is in the near future. A lot of nice little things like that. So then the mystery, as I said, there's a murder, and Shane and Van go to the murder scene, and the suspect is an integrator. And this causes kind of a problem, because what they don't know immediately, first of all, they don't know if the guy did it or not, because it's a mystery. But the question is, did the actual guy who's the integrator do it, or was a Hayden using the integrator? So did the Hayden do it? And there's a lot more to it than that regarding the victim and some things found on the scene, but of course I'm not going to get into that, because again, it's a mystery. You got to read it to find out what's going on. But that's a really interesting aspect to the story, I think, is, you know, they've found a guy here with the dead body. The guy's covered in blood. Did the guy do it, or was there someone inside the guy who did it? And that can really cause some problems. And you have a lot of characters that are Haydens, so they're using either robots or other people. And like the lawyer for the suspect, when they first meet the lawyer, he's in a male body. But later, when Shane runs into the lawyer again, the guy's using a female body. So, of course, first of all, Shane doesn't recognize him because it's a completely different body. He has to be introduced to him again. And, oh, it's you. So another little layer there. And then aside from this murder, you end up having a lab is blown up. And this is a lab that's been working on a cure for Haydens, which leads into some interesting things. Because apparently there are Haydens that don't feel they need to be cured. Now, I'm certainly no expert on the deaf community at all, but I have seen some things that seem to indicate there are those in the deaf community who don't want to hear. This could be complete BS and just crap I've seen on TV shows. But what I've seen is that there are those who feel, and there's no judgment here, I'm simply stating things. But there are those who feel that they're part of a special community, a tight-knit community, and if they had a cochlear implant or whatever to give them their hearing, they would no longer be part of this community that they've been a part of all of their lives. And they're afraid that they're going to lose something. And it's not worth what they would gain. And so apparently the point of that is that I was reminded of that because there seem to be these Haydens that feel the same way. They're part of their own special, tight-knit community. They don't want that taken away from them. They don't see being a Hayden as necessarily a disability. And they're kind of insulted that someone's looking for a cure to something that they feel doesn't need to be cured. Of course, there are also those that don't want to be locked in. It seems to be people who became victims of Haydens when they were much, much younger, and it's been most of their life they've been this way, and so it's really all they know, versus those who were older when it happened and want to get back to the life that they knew before. There's a character, Cassandra Bell, I believe, who was born locked in. One of the rare cases that was born this way and survived. So she's never known anything else. And she's never used an integrator, never used a robot body. Her presence has always been in the virtual world. And she's sort of a leader for Haydens. With the Abrams-Kettering bill cutting all this funding, she's started this protests, I guess is the best way to put it. There's on Shane's first day at work, it's I think the first day of a walkout by Haydens, and they're planning a march on Washington. And this all takes place in Washington, D.C. For the most part. Shane does have to travel the country a bit, and I'll get to that in a second. But the murder, it takes place in Washington, D.C. That's where Shane and Van work for the FBI. But Cassandra Bell is planning all of this stuff because with the passing of the Abrams-Kettering bill, like I said, all this funding has been slashed. So, excuse me, research is going to slow down a lot because people aren't going to be getting money to do research. I I don't know if there's sort of a welfare state necessarily for people with Hayden's, but it seems like people in lower middle class or lower income families aren't going to have access anymore to certain things like the robots or be able to rent an integrator. So there's a lot of stuff going on that's involved in this story, and may or may not have something to do with mystery. Could just be part of the world building. I'm not going to tell you one way or the other. But just really, really a well-created world here with everything that's going on. So, as I mentioned, Shane has to do some traveling. As they start unraveling the mystery and finding leads, he has to go to the Midwest and out to California at one point. And how he does it is simply they set up a threep for him at these two particular police or FBI offices in the Midwest, Arizona or someplace around there. I don't remember specifically. It has been a little while since I read this. But in the Midwest and then in California, they sort of set up a threep for him, and he transfers his consciousness to those threeps. And in both cases, I believe it's in both cases, the good threeps are already being used. So he ends up in sort of lower level or old model threeps. And in the case of California, I thought it was an amusing scene. The threep is in such bad shape that if he were to actually use it, he would be in a wheelchair, which was kind of funny. The conversation he has there amused me. But of course, he does come from a wealthy family, so he can go to, I think it's Hertz is the place that rents threeps. But one of the car rental places becomes essentially a threep rental place. And coming from money, Shane is able to get himself a nice threep wherever he goes. So a lot of little touches like this really make this a fun book to read. I personally, on occasion, had trouble remembering who was an integrator and who was the person using the integrator, but I think that simply came from the times when I wasn't reading. If a day went by because of my stupid job that I have to go to on occasion and sleep, these things getting in the way of my reading. But when I'd come back, say I went a day or so without picking up the book, and I would come back to it, it took me a little bit of time to get back into this person, this name was the integrator, and this other name was the person that would use the integrator, not vice versa. So when they would refer to, say, Nicholas Bell, I had to think about it for a second. Okay, was Bell the guy in the integrator, or was he actually the integrator? But that's just me, because I'm old. My memory doesn't work as well as it used to. But aside from that, it's very smooth read. Scalzi's writing style is just very straightforward. And he manages to get these sort of deeper issues without being preachy at all, without even feeling like he's really getting into these deeper issues. But they're all it's just woven into the story together very well. And for the Hayden Society, because these people are locked in, essentially they have to be taken care of 24 hours a day. Their bodies that they're locked into. So they have IVs and everything, nutrition, all this stuff going into them. There are special beds that keep them from getting bed sores. The beds themselves will move them and shift them and stuff. They may have caretakers, but as in Shane's case, His body is in one location that would make for a pretty decent commute to work. So he decides to rent a place in Washington, D.C., or at least in that area, closer to where he works. And it's essentially, at the bare bones, it's just a place to keep your robot body. So when he's with the realtor, the first place she shows him is essentially a closet. It's a place to put your robot body, plug it in to keep it powered up, and then you would assume that your consciousness goes back to your body and you're going to go to sleep or do whatever in your body that's just laying there. But he's like, no, that's not for me. So he ends up getting a place, a nice big, what do you call it? I don't know. It's a big old house split up into different apartments, and everybody sort of works together. It's almost a threep commune, but not quite. But everybody pitches in. But the rooms are much bigger, and you can actually store your body there if you choose to. And it's not just this closet-sized space for you to store your robot body. And but as I said, everybody pitches in. So for those who do keep their bodies there, the other tenants will check on them and make sure they're okay. Threeps don't eat, of course, because they're robots, and there's some talk about that, making them a little more human, so humans don't get uncomfortable. If you go to lunch and your robot partner's just sitting there doing nothing while you're eating, it can throw some people off. And apparently there's, again, there are many different models of threeps. Some have no faces. Some have slightly expressive faces. None of them look completely human. So the threeps are kind of cool too. It's just a very good mystery story, a very well-built near-future world, and the way it all comes together with the characters and the politics and everything is really, really fascinating. Like I said, Shane is a great character. Like I said, the rich boy who just wants to do good. He doesn't want to rely on his family's money, although, he does, because he does have that top model threep. But he doesn't use it to just buy his way in to things. He wants to earn his way as an FBI agent. Leslie Van, a really interesting, complex, fun character. I like her a lot. She's very hard-edged, but a lot of fun. And a lot of really interesting characters. There's a Washington, D.C. detective that has problems with Van. They have a history together. Gets into all that. A lot of the suspects and the other people involved that they meet during the course of the investigation are pretty interesting. And again, the whole world's just fascinating. And it all makes sense. And in the end, it all comes together. I don't know. I would love to see another story in this world. But he's already built the world, so it would have to be just a not straightforward mystery, but he doesn't need to do all the world building. I don't know if that would be better or not if he could just do another story without the world building because it's already there, or if the world building is part of what makes this such a good story. Such a good story. So I couldn't think of a better rating for this than to reuse one of the sets of drawings that I already did. It seemed appropriate. So I give Lock-In by John Scalzi 5 out of 5 robot heads. And appropriately, we got him there. But there you go, 5 out of 5 robot heads. Even though they're technically not, well, they are robots. They just have people's consciousnesses inside them. Really good, highly recommended. I haven't read a lot of Scalzi. The last one I read was Red Shirts, which I reviewed, and I'll throw a link for that up here somewhere in case you want to check out that review. But I'm definitely going to have to pick up more because Red Shirts was fantastic, and this was really, really good. An amazing world, great characters, an interesting mystery. It's a page-turner. Another one, if I didn't have to sleep and work so I could pay the bills, I would have just kept reading this. I would have been locked into my chair reading Lock-In by John Scalzi. So, all right, I'll have a link for the book in the description below. Well, I haven't done this part in a long time. If there are any comments, questions, or corrections, put them in the comments below. Comments will be open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. And please like, share, and subscribe. This has been the Low Budget Review Show. Talking about Lock-In. I have been your host, Eric Smith. And until next time, read more books.